Okay, we can get started. I want to welcome you to the Niagara OGS webinar for June. We won't be having webinars over the summer, so I just want to give you a heads up on that one, but we will be resuming our webinars in the fall, and in September, we do have Ken McKinley talking to us about land records. So we will be resuming webinars in the fall. Over the summer, we will be adding some new information on our website, and we have been adding it periodically all the time. We have a transcription project that we're working on, and we would like to have more volunteers. If anybody wants to volunteer, that would be awesome. It's just going to help us progress that much faster. So that would be great if we could get more volunteers, or if you want to volunteer for something else as well, just shoot us an email and we can talk about it. So we're always looking for people to help us out with the Niagara branch. I also want to welcome our new person. Amanda Napper is going to be working on our newspaper, and I think Amanda is on tonight. So I want to welcome Amanda to the Niagara OGS. So she will be working on our newspaper for us. So now we can get to what the webinar is about tonight. I want to introduce Steve Fulton. Steve Fulton is the current chair of the Niagara OGS and has been the chair for quite a few years. He is the past chair of the provincial organization, and he has a strong background in IT. So he's well qualified to talk about his digital plans for his genealogy. So I would like to welcome Steve to the webinar.
All right. Well, thank you very kindly, Lois, and thanks for everyone joining tonight. So Lois, I'll let you take over the admitting people, and we are going to get started. First, I'm going to turn on my camera so everybody can see me, and we are going to just flip over to my slide. And I am going to assume that you can see that. So tonight, many of you who know me know that I love technology. Anything to do with technology, it's intriguing and it's amazing. And yes, sometimes I need to pull myself back and remember that not everyone is operating at the same speed that I am operating at. But with technology, it changes everything. And our genealogy, our family history has been affected by this change as well. And we just, what we want to do tonight, we're going to talk a lot about a lot of different things. And it's going to be a very high-end kind of conversation. But the goal here tonight is to get you to think about your research, about what you're doing, how you're preserving, how are you protecting the 30+ years of research. Or maybe you just started genealogy right now, and this is your first webinar, and you know you and your parents and your grandparents. That's okay. This is for everyone, because we've all started at the beginning, just where maybe some people are right now, or there's some that have been doing it for years and years, and we need to engage everyone in that. So as we go along, if you have any questions, you can put it into the chat window. I will do my best to keep an eye for that. But if I miss it, I will get it at the end of the session this evening. So let's get started here. We have all had this window. Either if you're a Mac user or a PC user, we've all had the trouble of the Explorer or the screen just freezing for whatever reason. But as I said earlier, technology has matured and our hobby has changed due to technology. Yes, Even today, it's important that we go into the libraries, and because not everything is online, and we recognize that. Now, at the Niagara branch, our mission is to free the data. We digitize, we try to index, we try to make it available onto our website, but not everything is online. And you still have to, old school, go into the libraries or go into the archives or the museums. But through this process, it will eventually be scanned, or you will eventually get to some point of technology. And even if you have physical pictures of your ancestors in your home, they may not be technology, but they're a media. And we want to talk about that as well. We may not talk as much about that. But before we get started, and I do see a few people on this call tonight that I have asked this question to before, and I know they know what I'm talking about when I'm, before I even mention the question. But I would actually just like to ask you, and you can put a response in chat or you can just think about it, but how many of you would be perfectly fine? You have no problems, no consequences if, say, your home unfortunately burned to the ground. All your family history is good, you're all well, and you know, how many of you are there? I am not there. I wish I was there, but I am not there. How many of you, if your home or wherever your family history is right now, caught fire or was flooded or burned, it would be a total disaster. You would lose it all. And you know, just think about that, and the years and the effort and the money that you poured into this. You know, that's important. And then how many of you are kind of in the middle? Your digital is okay, but your paper, you know, would be a problem. And that's where I sit in my research. My paper is the issue that I have a concern with. But hopefully through this process, we can talk about this, and even maybe I can learn from you, and, you know, and we can share ideas, because we tend to pour years and years of research, of time and money and effort into our research. But do we ever really think about it outliving us? And hopefully we can touch base on that tonight. So let's just take a flash to the past in technology. Family Tree Maker back in 1989, 32 years ago, when they released version 1.0. How exciting that must have been. Some people could easily remember that. Myself, 1989, that was the year I graduated grade 12. I had no clue what family history was, or what Family Tree Maker was, for that matter. It wasn't part of my thinking at that time. But 32 years has passed to today of Family Tree Maker, and there's probably other programs like Brothers Keepers and many others that I could reference to. And I do know that some people are still using, for example, Brothers Keeper, even to today, even though it's no longer supported. And it's how technology is changing and how we are managing it going forward. Just so that you are aware, there is no handout tonight, and I will try to give as much information, but this session is being recorded and will be in the members only section of the Niagara branch. So technology and its effects on genealogy. It has a pro and it has a con. Like any technology, there's a dark and a light side. For those who are into Star Wars, there is the light side and the dark side of the Force. So the light side is immediate access to information in person. It's an education from a distance like this. I know tonight there is someone from Saskatchewan on the call tonight, and I'd like to welcome you. And there's many from all over the province that are on this call tonight. We can virtually explore places without even being there. For example, Google Maps now has street views, so you can actually zoom down to a house and you can see where your ancestors would have lived, or maybe over in Scotland or England. DNA research, we've all talked about that, making information available to the public. And then the costs. There's a pro to costs in technology because it is, you don't have to get on a plane. You can get it directly. The con side of it is the social interaction. And during this last little while with the pandemic, I've heard a lot of family historians talking about they miss the social interaction. Online is great, but they need that social interaction. Things like privacy and copyright is a big concern to that, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. Corruption of information. How many of you had a hard drive crash, a computer crash, and you didn't have a backup, and you've lost hundreds of pictures? I'm going to admit, I'm one of them. Back in the early years, didn't have a backup, and I lost a lot of pictures. It was unfortunate. Technical issues of data management. How do you manage all this data? Thousands and thousands of images and pictures being snapped every day. And how do you manage them? Costs. Costs again is a con because now you're upgrading computers and you're buying subscriptions and stuff like that. And then finally, our digital existence outlives us. And what are we going to do with that? So again, I talked a little bit about today's technology, and this slide actually comes from an older one, but these are all the different things, and there's more that I could have added. You know, how many devices do you actually have that's on this list that you know, you can call your own? And how do we utilize this technology? From an Android phone taking pictures, to a USB key that stores files, to a laptop, to a desktop, you know, where all this information is gathered. And how do you manage all this information? So as we're going forward, let's just get to the next slide here. I'm just reading your comments, and okay, let me see here. Okay, the next piece of technology. Not many people may be fully aware of this here, but this is what you call a Raspberry Pi. And this little device is a computer. And it's worth less than a couple $100. And we're going to talk a little bit more about it, but this is kind of the cutting edge of technology that is coming out. And with that, you know, as we go forward, we can continue to do that. One of the things that you can use with a Raspberry Pi is, say, put a website up. And I have two examples here, one of my own and one of a friends of mine, and we can do that. Just so with that, you can host a website, you can host your family history, you can put this information online for other people to see. So today's technology, as it continues to grow and change and morph as we go through, some of you may be very familiar with this, this symbol that you see on the screen. And it is what is called a QR code. And a QR code, there is more information. It is like a barcode, but it is a smart barcode per se. And you can scan it with your phone, your smart device, and it can give you information. It can give you a website, and that kind of information is there. This particular one, if you've already scanned it, and if you are familiar with it, you can actually go to CanadianHeadstone.com, and it will take you to that particular website. So I'm just seeing, I'm just reading through the comments. I'm just pausing for a second, and we're just getting, might be some unmuted people. We will check the list as we go along here. And I apologize for any noise that you hear from my background. You may hear some noise from my background, and I will continue to try to talk over that. So of course, many of you may be familiar with Google Translate. Google Translate has an app that you can put on your phone. And this is a great opportunity if you are, when we eventually get back to traveling, can you actually take that and put it up to a sign that's written in, say, Russian or in another language, and it will in real time translate it to English for you. And it will provide that information in real time. It's really the age of Star Trek, as I have listed there. So let's get into the data management plan of what we are. So these are some of these technologies that I've just shared with you just briefly, is to kind of give you an overall view of what is out there. What are the possibilities? And what are you capable of doing? Or is others are capable of doing on your behalf? So a data management plan. A data management plan, or a DMP, is a formal document that outlines how you will handle your data both during your research and after the project is complete. Now, the last part there, the person who wrote this must have never done family history, because we all know that genealogy is never complete. But it is accurate in what they were saying. It is a document that outlines how you will handle your data now, 10 years from now, and into the future. And data can be different types. It can be tangible and non-tangible. And this is where we start to talk about paper or electronic, or a little bit of both, because we all have scraps of paper. We all have clues that we're trying to follow. And how are we managing that going forward? So what is your filing cabinet going to be like? So who has the longer shelf life, you or your research? What are you going to do with the research when you have completed it and no longer wish to go forward with it? How are you going to store it? Who is it going to go to, and what format? Of course, paper has always been the tried and tested, over the generations. People print it out, they store it into a filing cabinet, they put the pictures with it, and they do all that kind of stuff. And they're so diligent in this. And then something happens to them, and their kids pick it up and throw it in a 30-yard dumpster. Because the one section that didn't get covered is about what was the plan, or what did you want seen with it going forward. So understanding the data of the data, okay? So what types of data will be produced? Format, file size, what metadata standards do you need to follow? Have you made considerations for those who are living and their personal information? What rules do you need to follow? And how will you ensure archiving and preservation of the data you will produce? We have multiple file formats, from JPEGs to text files, file sizes. Every year, I remember when digital cameras first came out, I was working in the retail industry, and digital cameras came out and they were a megapixel. And that was outstanding. You know, we could take a picture, we could see it in real time. And very quickly, over the last 20 years, I'm now dealing with images coming off my smartphone at 6 to 8 megs in size. The camera is actually a 12 megapixel camera. So the file size is getting much bigger. And how are you going to handle that going forward? Scanners as well, they're getting bigger. Privacy. Privacy is a big thing. As the world is changing and the more and more we're coming online in social media and on the internet, people don't want their stuff all over the place without it being protected. And how are we going to manage that going forward? The metadata. Metadata is the data behind the data, telling the location, the time, the date, the particulars of that, say, that folder or that file or that image. So when we look at the data, how do we manage it for the future? One of the things that is very particular is GEDCOM. And I would say many of you, if not all of you, are familiar with that term. And that is the universal language that goes from Family Tree Maker to Brothers Keepers to Roots Magic to, it's universal. It goes across all the family tree programs. And that is provided by FamilySearch.org. Just recently, GEDCOM 5.5 has been out for years and years, never really received an update. And just recently, we're starting to see GEDCOM 7.0. So there's been some upgrades to that, and hopefully further information will come out about that. JPEG images, you know, is that the standard? And a lot of our research we think about today and now. But what about 50 years from now or 100 years from now? Will that JPEG still be that standard? I guess what we're really trying to get to with this information is that proprietary software, like a book writing software or a photo album software that has a proprietary file format, is not going to survive. We need to look at things like PDFs and JPEGs and RTF files, real text format, that are universal and that can be upgraded from operating system to operating system. If you're dealing with a proprietary piece of software, its shelf life may not be that long. So again, capturing or interpreting the information, questions to consider. So what information is needed for data to be read and interpreted into the future? Again, a proprietary software. If you're going to publish it into a book, then maybe put a copy of the CD or the USB key with it so that somebody 50 years from now, when that software is gone, has the ability possibly to reload it. I couldn't honestly tell you if they would be able to reload it, but if they had it, there might be a better chance. How will you structure and name your files and folders? And this is the biggest challenge. I deal with a lot of websites, and I know that a lot of web designers, they build a site and it's a rocking website, but it's only for them. They forget the simple fact that they're building it for the future, for the user and those using it into the future. It's the same thing with your family history. you need to create a key or an index explaining to people how to understand how you have the information sorted. In my particular family history that I use Dropbox. I create the 5 names that I'm searching. And then under each name, I have birth, marriage, death, and then immigration and, other folders. And then underneath that, I start to spell out the documents. The system works for me. And I hope is clear for others in the future to understand it. But if not, I need to create an index to explain to them how to find Great Aunt Mary's birth certificate and how to get that information out of the data that I have. The final one is, how will you handle versioning? Now, the best example I can give you, in 1989, when Family Tree Maker 1.0 came out, if you're still operating on that version today, which would be a miracle, but it wouldn't surprise me, you cannot just go from version 1.1 to 2001 or 2019, I think is the last version, 2019. It just will not go, it will not switch to such an extreme. I had an opportunity to work with someone that had a very old version. I think it was 2010 they were operating with. And we had to, get it to, we had to step it up about halfway to 2015. The dates are kind of fuzzy, but if you know what I mean, we had to take it from one version, come about halfway, upgrade it, and then take it the rest of the way. So when you're handling data, make sure that you're versioning, you're moving it up to the next level. Your Word document that was created by Word 1997 needs to be, if you have a computer full of Word 97, you need to go in and resave those documents to 2016 or whatever the latest version of Windows you have, because eventually they will be not openable. You will not be able to open those documents any longer. I remember when I first joined the branch years ago, we would find boxes of floppy disks. And, great, most people stick them in a portable drive. I'm still doing it. I still have a stack of floppy disks I have to go through. But the problem is that no versioning ever happened. And we found files from Commodore 64, from the TSR-80, from the Apple III. They just couldn't be managed, and the data was lost, and they just went in the garbage. Okay, so sharing information. How will potential users find out about your data? And whom will you share the data and under what conditions? Will you share the data via a repository, handle requests, or use another mechanism? And when will you make the data available? There's a lot of questions in this. And first of all, how will you make, 100 years from now, just think 100 years from now, how will your descendants find your work? Mine, I plan to have copies in a digital and a tangible format, a non-tangible and tangible format. I'm going to, I need to get it into a public library, and I also need to store a copy with the Niagara branch. And then, because I can store it as well, if I'm going to put it there, it's accessible and shareable for others. Because I believe that if we do that, my descendants will not have to start at zero where I started. And it's a gift that we just keep on giving. As well as I want to put it into a non-tangible format and store it on a grander scale, say at familysearch.org or Ancestry or the OGS on a grander scale. So who am I going to share the data and under what conditions? And that's difficult. That's difficult to ask. If I'm going to put it in the library or in the local branch, we're going to share it. And under what conditions? Is there living information in there? We need to protect that information. We are responsible to protect that information. And how are we going to handle requests? Well, if I'm no longer here, then that's unfortunately someone else's problem. And they can do that. And when will I make that data available? That is the question. Because right now, I have it all. And, I haven't made it available. But what if something catastrophic happened tomorrow? Or I won the lottery and that was it. I was gone. I got on a boat and see you later, off to a private island. You know what I mean? I need to have my data kind of ready to go, but not ready to go because I'm constantly adding to it. Is your data ready if something was to happen, someone to come in and say, okay, we can capture this and we can hand it off? Or is it in such chaos that they would never make heads or tails? I guess the best example I will share with you before we go to the next slide, myself and 6 other genealogists had to clean out the home of a very well-known family historian who passed away in her older years. It took 6 of us 2 12-hour days to clean out one room. It was a disaster. And we were emptying boxes. We probably threw stuff away we shouldn't have, but there was so much paper and so much material that it was impossible to actually sort through. And I hope that through this talk tonight, we can prevent that for others in the future. So the gray zone of genealogy. Like I said, genealogy has got the light and the dark. Technology has the light and the dark, but genealogy tends to operate in this gray zone. And it's unnerving at times because is it the right thing to do? Copyright, privacy, living information. How do we protect that? And how do we ethically manage this information? So the first question is, how will you manage any ethical issues? Have you gained consent for data preservation and sharing, or protect the identity of the participants? And how will sensitive data be handled? And every family's got information that you really don't want to drag through the mud and share. But as a family historian, you have this deep desire to preserve the information so it's not lost. Who owns the data? And are there any restrictions on the data? I guess the first thing that I would share with you, and we've all done it, and I'm as guilty as the next person, is Facebook. You see a great picture of your family, you download it, you right click on it, you save it, you download it, you stick it in your family history, and what's it matter? But that picture isn't yours. It's copyrighted to the photographer, whoever took it. It belongs to the person who posted it. And without seeking their permission, I've seen people download it and repost a picture back on Facebook, or take a picture that got shared with them and then put their photo of their grandchildren on Facebook, and the parents went ballistic because they don't want their kids on Facebook, or they, they have rights to that. So we need to make sure that we are protecting the data, but we need to ask permission. Simply, that's it. 9 times out of 10, 99.9 times out of 100, people will say yes, because they know it's just for family history. They may give you a few restrictions, but it's the right thing to do in that, what we're doing. Copyright is one, privacy is another. You don't want to start putting birth dates of living people and personal information on Ancestry without protecting it. There's identity theft. There's all sorts of things that could happen once people start getting personal information. It only takes 3 items to identify where a person is, where they live, and all about them, and how much of your information is protected in that sense. So, archiving your research. Where, in which repository or archive will the data be held? Will it be held in cloud computing, a genealogical society, a digital library like that, or a personal storage device? There's lots of opportunities out there that we could use in order to store this data, to keep it safe, and then pass it on to the next generation, or to a repository or an archive to do that. A lot of people I've heard have talked about cloud computing, and they're not a big fan of it. They're nervous and they don't know where it goes. And it does have its challenges, because when your data is put into something like Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive, where is that data going? And under what laws of what country now is your data being regulated by? So if your data was to go into the US and the US government, served a warrant to Google, they would have access to that information. A genealogical society is always a good bet. The challenges there are, most, if not all, genealogical societies, most, I would say, genealogical societies are volunteers. So you don't have people that may be sophisticated or technically advantaged to manage that data. They may be able to manage the paper and the tangible items that you can donate, but the data itself may just sit on a USB key because they have no ability to manage that. So you need to do your research when you're looking to donate it to, say, a library or a genealogical society, and how your information. Your personal storage device can be anything from a USB key to an Ethernet hard drive that's somewhere else. It's all good stuff, but again, who's going to access it? Who's going to manage it? Is it protected? Is it backed up? There's all these kinds of questions that you can do. Okay. So again, we talked a little bit about research, your cloud computing, and I just want to touch a little bit on each one of these. We have an example that I use with cloud computing that it's not directly involved with genealogy, but it is a way that we can use as an example to protect information. Many of us go to cemeteries and go to archives and stuff like that, and we take pictures. And our phone gets full of pictures, or we're out on a road trip and we're snapping homes and different things, but it all resides on that phone or on that camera. And what if it got lost, or what if it got stolen, heaven forbid, or something like that? You would lose it all. A great example is my daughter and my wife went to El Salvador on a missions trip. And I knew that they were going down there, and I knew that there wouldn't be a place for them to back up that information. So I took the time and I set up their phones for Dropbox. And I knew that where they were staying was had Wi-Fi. So at the end of every day, and my wife loves to take lots of pictures, and we all do because it doesn't cost anything. And you could just snap pictures all day long. But at the end of the day, I knew they were back in their in the compounds where they were staying, because all of a sudden my Dropbox would start. And photos from El Salvador were being uploaded in El Salvador and being downloaded to my computer here in Niagara in real time. So literally, the worst case scenario, we would lose a day's worth of pictures. And I would take them all. I didn't worry about them because sometimes there was hundreds of them. I would just stick them into a folder. And when my wife came home, she sorted them and went through them all. And of course, on my computer, they're backed up again. So they're managed that way. So when you're out on road trips and out on things like that, look at that very possibility that something could happen. And how are you backing that information up? Another device is an external drive. And this, not too many people have one of these. This is a 10-bay Synology drive. This is actually the heart of the OGS cloud that the Society uses to acquire data and to allow our branches and special interest groups to store data off their personal computers and to keep it safe. This is, you wouldn't require something like this, but even a smaller 1-bay or 2-bay external drive stored at someone else's house, you can access online, and you can get that information. Having a backup is great, but I've seen in situations where people have a backup to, say, a USB drive or a USB key. They do the backup and then they put it in the cupboard above their head. That's great, it's backed up, but when you're running out of the house due to a fire, or something was happening, you're not thinking of that backup. You're thinking about getting yourself and your family out of the house. So now you've only lost your computer, you've now lost your backup. So always having that backup to another place's or another person's home, a brother or sister's home, is always a smart thing to do. And just giving it to them and just telling them to put it in the drawer and keep it, and having two and just swapping them out is a great way of doing this. Finally, I just want to touch a little bit about, we had talked earlier about the Raspberry Pi and building a website to promote your family history. And this particular program that you see in front of you is called TNG, or the Next Generation Genealogy Software. And we do have a version of this running for OGS, and we have been collecting people's GEDCOM files for anyone researching in Ontario. And it's free to upload, and you can store the information there, and you can update it as you see fit. No one can change the data. It's only searchable. Excuse me. And it is, it protects the living information. But you can find this at ontariofamilies.org. But you can actually go to the website, TNG, or the Next Generation. If you do a Google search, the Next Generation Genealogy Software, do a Google search on that, and you can find it, and you can buy it. And you can get yourself, if you feel very adventurous, and you can actually buy a Raspberry Pi and get yourself a domain name, and you can build a website and make this available to your family and those who are interested in what you're doing. So tonight we talked a lot about the different types of technology. And to be very honest with you, each slide is a discussion all on its own. We could talk about a tangible versus intangible, or a building a website, or different types of storage medias, or a data management plan, and breaking that out and understanding the different points of what a data management plan is. We could even talk about what I didn't even cover tonight, was a digital will. And we'll sum it up with the digital will. I didn't make a slide, but I'll share the information. But many people have a will, and it deals with your finances and all the tangible things in your life and your final wishes. But what about your digital existence? What about your Facebook account? What about your Gmail account, or your iMac, your iTunes account? A lot of people don't realize that the iTunes music that you purchase and download to listen to, you're only purchasing it for the right to listen to it, not because you own it. Unless something has changed recently, you don't own it. You've only paid for the opportunity to listen to it. When you are to pass, what do you want with your Facebook profile? What do you want with your email accounts? Excuse me. What are your passwords to get into your Ancestry account, or your Find My Past, or Family Search, or My Heritage? You're doing a disservice to your family if you don't provide this information. One of the things that I've always thought of is that we could be that avenue for families, that when that time does come, that we as a branch could assist and be that guidance to those who are trying to deal with their parents or whoever's years of family history research, and just walk them through and how to preserve it and how to protect it, because it is massive, as you can see tonight. There's a lot of things that you need to consider, and I would encourage you to go through it all. Take, for every hour you research, take 5 minutes and just think about this conversation. And how is it going to be preserved for the future? How is it going to be protected? How are you going to avoid that 30-yard dumpster? So with that, I am at the question time. So let me just go through some of your questions. Let me just see there. So how would someone go about donating their research to a place where it may benefit someone who may be researching the same family? Absolutely, that's a great question. And I would be very honest with you, I would just research. If you're going to take it to, like, we have the Central Library of the St. Catherine's Public Library. Great location, great place to donate your stuff to. They have an amazing facility. You could go there. But say if you're down in Humberstone, down in Port Colborne, you could go to the archives down there, okay? Or say Fort Erie, you could go to the public library there. The branch is always here. We will always take donations of family history, and we will work through your needs, but our eventual goal is to share it. And if we can put it into a members only to allow the members to access it, it's a great way to do that. Thank you, Cindy. Mac rules, no hardware problems. That's okay, I'm good with that. But software, we should have a discussion about that time. And Mac is a whole nother conversation we're not going to get into tonight. Let me see what else we got here. Alana, I just came across a box of 3.25 floppy disks in my basement this week. Everybody's got them. What's on them? Liz, do public libraries and other tangible repositories regularly upversion all the material they've been given? Well, they have limited budgets. And if it's a tangible item, you can't really upgrade it, but you can preserve it. You can put it in an acid-free container or an envelope and protect it. And that's pretty much, what they can do and what they're expected to do as they have a limited budget in that. Alana, is there a template document used to obtain consent from others? Great question, Alana. We will research that, and I'm going to put that on the website. We'll talk with the branch council, and if everybody's good, we'll make that resource available over the summer. But that's a great question. Vicky, this may be a good business opportunity for someone converting paper documents to digital form for paying clients. Yeah, it would be a great opportunity. I don't know on a business level if you could make, to be very honest, I don't think you could make any money. I think that's why genealogical societies are the way they are, full of volunteers, because nobody's going to pay thousands of dollars to get stuff digitized to make it, profitable in any sort of fashion. Myrna, Ancestry does not show information on living people to anyone except the person who owns the tree. Exactly. Does that mean Ancestry information is not secure? So we didn't talk a little bit about even the more darker side of the internet, and that is hackers, people who break into things. If you have a password that's ABC123, people are going to get into your account. Ancestry doesn't show living information, and it is safe, it is secure. But you also have an obligation as well to make sure that your passwords are safe and secure and updated on a regular basis. Don't use the same password on all 500 accounts that you have, from banking to Ancestry to this to that. It just doesn't work. And you need to make sure that it's secure. Would a T drive work? So this is from Shannon. Would a T drive work? I don't, the phrases, I'm not familiar with that, but to be very honest, if it stores it off your computer and you can store it somewhere else, it'll work. Sarah, FYI for Steve, Brothers Keepers genealogy software is still being supported. It's currently at version 7.5, last updated April 21st, 2021. Thank you for updating me. There was another one I was trying to reference, but I can't think of the name right now. Sheila, do you, the branch, accept family histories that are not in digital format? Absolutely. But I'm going to be very honest with you. Shelf space at the local library is very limited. And we have to be very careful in how much we put in. So the first question that I'm going to ask, or I hope our council members will ask, is can we digitize it? And then we can set it aside. We can protect the original, and we can have a digital copy that we can share if you permit us to do so. From Cindy, what advantage do you feel Dropbox has over other cloud storage? I just find it of ease. It's much simpler. Google Drive, I had to download a little applet to make it sync. Once I got it working, it was good. OneDrive is okay, but it has its issues getting it going. And even during the process, I struggle with it from time to time, not connecting. I actually use all three on my computer. My family data, my live family data is in one, and then my backup for that live goes into another. And then the third one is for my regular day-to-day. So if my computer was to die right at this minute, unfortunately the talk would be over, but I wouldn't lose any of that data because it's within 3 repositories. And by using the 3 of them, I can utilize the free space because I don't pay for them. So what, let's see, what was the device called that you said we could use in almost at the beginning of the lecture? I use OneDrive as my cloud backup for all my phone contact and my research. This includes backing up all my genealogy software. What was the device called? Let me just see here. What device was I talking about? I was talking about a Raspberry Pi. But then there's cloud and there's an Ethernet or a USB drive that you can use as well. Alana, LastPass is a great resource to store complex passwords. Absolutely. There's also a feature that you can designate a person to have emergency access in case something happens to you. Fantastic. That's the kind of backup stuff that you need. But just make sure that the person who is the backup knows they're the backup, because that would be really bad if they didn't know they were the backup and had all that access. Debbie, are you thinking of PAF? Probably, but again, it's just slipping my mind and I can't get it. From Michael Nettleton. Hey, Michael, I use sync.com for cloud storage. All data stored in Canada, encrypted in storage, competitive with the big ones. There's lots of opportunities to store your data online or offsite. With all the technology that is available today, we should never ever hear that somebody has lost it all because of a data crash or a computer crash or a house fire or flooding. It should just not happen at all. There's lots of free opportunities out there. There's lots of cheap technology that you can use, not cheap in quality, but cheap in expense, that people can back this data up. And there's lots of people out there that just have some knowledge. You know, reach out to your other genealogy friends and say, hey, take 2 seconds, go, hey, are you backing up your stuff? And hold them accountable. And they should hold you accountable, because heaven forbid we were to lose it all. So Adrienne, thanks very much, Steve and the Niagara branch. Interesting session. So on behalf of the Niagara branch, Lois, do you have anything, or I'm just going to close this out?
No, it was excellent, Steve. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So as Lois said, we won't be having a session July or August, but hey, take the time. Thanks for listening tonight. Look at your family history. Make sure it's safe, because it's the gift that you can keep giving for the future. So have a great night, folks, and have a great summer. And take care. Bye-bye for now.